Now, if you remember when we set up the Google Ads conversion action in the Google Ads UI, we got the conversion ID and the form submission here. Hey guys, Patrick Sam here from 𝗪𝗪𝘁, and welcome to Module 2 of the Conversion Tracking Fundamentals for Lead Generation inside of Google Ads. So in this module, we are going to be covering Google Ads conversion tracking for form submissions. Now, when it comes to lead generation, in most cases, leads will come from form submissions. Yes, there are phone calls and other areas like live chats that people could come from as a potential lead. But since form submissions is normally the main method that businesses acquire leads, we will be covering that in this module. Okay, so a quick recap of what this three-part course will be covering. In part 1, we already went over the basics of Google Tag Manager. In part 2, we are going to go over Google Ads conversion tracking for form submissions. And then in part 3, we will be covering enhanced conversions for web. Okay, so in module 2, you will learn how to create a new conversion action from scratch within the Google Ads UI. You will learn how to track a form submission using Google Tag Manager by deploying a certain tag type alongside the correct triggers and the variables. And then finally, you should be able to debug and test that the conversion tracking tag that we do implement actually works and sends the correct data back to Google Ads when you run your ads. So at the end of module 2, you should be able to understand how conversions actually work inside of Google Ads, how tags, triggers, and variables interact with each other inside of Google Tag Manager, and then finally how to use the Google Tag Manager preview mode for troubleshooting. So yeah, let's jump in. Okay, so the first step is to create a new conversion action within inside the Google Ads UI. So let's do a walkthrough and see how you can actually do that. Okay, so the first thing you want to do on the Google Ads UI is to go to the goals section on the left-hand navigation bar, which will take you to your conversions page. And the next thing you want to do is to click the Create Conversion Action button here, and then you want to select Website Conversion. Now type in your domain name, so in my case it's https://𝗪𝗵𝘁.co.uk. Click Scan, and it will check if you have Google Tag Manager installed in your website. Then get a pop-up like so, and you'll get an option to either add a conversion action manually or to save and continue. Since we want full control and we don't want to give control over to Google, we will add a conversion action manually by clicking this. And then you'll get a pop-up. So the first field, goal, action, and optimization, you'll select a category where your conversion action will be placed into. Now, this doesn't actually affect how your conversion action will behave. It's more like an organization thing. So just pick the category that is most relevant to the conversion action that you are creating. Since this example will be for form submissions, we will go with the submit to lead form category in the leads category section here, like that. And then conversion action optimization options. So we can select if it's a primary action or a secondary action. If you don't know what the difference is between a primary and secondary conversion action, I do have a video on that, but to break it down briefly, a primary action is used to optimize towards your campaign goals. So Google's algorithms will use data that is from a primary conversion. You can have multiple primary conversions, so do be careful when you select this option here. Because it's a form submission and it's an important action for our business, we will keep it as primary. But if it's like an action that's maybe a micro conversion, so something that you want to track but it's not super important to your business and you don't want Google's algorithms to optimize towards it, then you can set it as a secondary action here. Now, Google does give you the definition here if you are not sure what a primary and secondary conversion actions are, or is, sorry. So yeah, you can also read this box here. But again, as I mentioned, we'll keep this as primary. Next, we want to set the conversion name. You can call it whatever you want. We'll just call it form submission to keep it nice and simple. And then next is the value box. So you can actually send some revenue details back to Google based on the conversion action here. So you could use the same value for each conversion. So maybe I value a form submission at £100 per form submission. So every time a conversion action is logged, Google will attribute £100 to that conversion action and campaign or campaigns that got that form submission. Or you could use different values for each conversion. If you pick this, then you'll need to dynamically upload the revenue or send the revenue to Google, which you can do through Google Tag Manager. And if it doesn't send any value over, you can have a fallback default value here of, in this case, £100, but we could change this to 200. It could be set to whatever you want. Or alternatively, you can just not send a revenue option or value option here if it's not relevant for this specific conversion action. In this case, I don't know how much a form submission is worth because this is just a test or an example that I'm going through for this course. So I'm just going to select it as don't use a value for this conversion action. So it will always send over the value as 0. The next section is the count section. So how many times you want to count a conversion action for an individual. So you can either select for one person can have multiple conversion actions, or you can just have it as one person will only ever be counted as one conversion action. So this is more for like e-commerce where you would have conversions counted every single time for one individual. So let's say a person comes to your ads, they maybe purchase a product. We would count that as, a purchase conversion action. And again, maybe let's say 2 weeks later or a month later, they might again convert on our website and make a second purchase. And again, if we're still tracking a cookie, we would ideally want to still track that conversion action. So that would be 2 actions for one individual, which is something you would want to do for e-commerce. However, since this is for lead generation, in most cases, you only ever want to track one form submission for a single individual. It's very rare would you want an individual to send multiple form submissions if it's for the same product or service, because chances are they're just inflating your number of conversions for form submissions. So when it comes to lead generation, I would suggest just keeping it as 1 here. And then for click-through conversion window, it's set to 30 days by default. I recommend setting it to the maximum, which is 90 days, just so you can capture some extra data. For engaged view-through conversion window and view-through conversion window, I would just keep them as 3 days and 1 day respectively. And then for attribution, I would keep it as the recommended data-driven, but you can also set it as last click if you want to, but these days no one uses last click. It's just better to have data-driven. Enhanced conversions, which we'll cover in the next module, but this is already ticked here, which is great. And then we'll finally click done, and we will be able to create this conversion action. And then click save and continue here, and you can see we've got that conversion that we just made there. And then you'll get another set of instructions here. So you can set up with a Google tag, email instructions to your webmaster, or use Google Tag Manager. So you want to click in this tab here, use Google Tag Manager, and it will present you with some important information here. So it's given us a conversion ID and a form submission, or this is also called a conversion label inside of Google Tag Manager. So these 2 pieces of information are necessary to create a conversion tracking tag within Google Tag Manager, which we will jump into next. Okay, so tracking form submissions inside of Google Tag Manager. How do we now set up conversion tracking for the conversion action that we just created inside of the Google Ads UI? So let's jump into Google Tag Manager and the form that I've created for demonstration purposes to see how we can set this up. Okay, so this is the basic form we're going to be setting up Google Ads conversion tracking for. As you can see, it's just 3 simple fields: a name, email, and message. So to set this up in Google Tag Manager, the first thing we need to do is to create a new tag. We're going to actually create 2 tags. So for this one, we're going to call this one conversion linker. Click on tag configuration, and then we'll get a library of pre-made tags. You want to click on Google Ads, and you want to click on conversion linker. Alternatively, you can just click on conversion linker here if you want to, like so. So conversion linker is used by Google to create a first-party cookie when people come from a Google Ads and go to your landing page. It's a way for Google to identify where the click has come from and who actually clicked the ads, and it's used to also attribute back to your conversion actions. It's something you need on every single Google Ads account. Always make sure you have a a conversion linker tag deployed inside of your Google Tag Manager before you even set up any other conversion tag types. So we created a conversion linker tag here, and the next thing we want to do is to create a trigger. So in the trigger, we have some pre-made triggers here, like all pages. So for this one, we can just select either all pages, or you can select one of the other ones. If you have like a cookie banner set up, you might use consent initialization. But for this example, we'll just use the all pages trigger, like so, and then click save. So this conversion linker tag now will always be fired on every single page on your website. It won't actually work at the moment because we haven't submitted the changes to the Google Tag Manager container yet, but it's basically ready to go. Okay, so now we need to make a second Google Ads tag, second tag for Google Ads conversion tracking. And for this tag, we can call it Google Ads -form submissions. Again, click on tag configuration. Click on Google Ads this time. And for this, we want to create a Google Ads conversion tracking tag. So you'll get a bunch of different fields here. Some are optional, some are compulsory. Don't feel too overwhelmed because we'll go through them right now. Now, if you remember, when we set up the Google Ads conversion action in the Google Ads UI, we got the conversion ID and the form submission here. So if I just copy the conversion ID, go back to here, you can see there's a conversion ID field here, which is actually this ID, which I just copied over. And then you also want to copy the form submission ID here, which is also known as the conversion label inside of Google Tag Manager. So when this tag fires, it sends this ID and conversion label back over to Google Ads, so it can identify which conversion action needs to be counted in the Google Ads UI. So these two fields are compulsory and must be filled in order for your conversion ads tracking to work correctly. Now, these other fields like transaction ID, currency codes, conversion value, these are all optional and don't need to be filled in. So we'll leave those for now. Now, there is a better way to fill in conversion ID and conversion label if you plan to create multiple Google Ads conversion tags, which I'll show you right now. For now, I'll just save this. There's no trigger, which is why it's getting this pop-up, but I'll just click Save Tag because we will come back to it. Okay, so if I go to the variables section, and then if I go to user-defined variables and create new user-defined variable, and for this I can call it conversion ID, click on variable configuration, and then if you go to utility section and click on constant, so the value is set to the string that you provide. Now if I go back to the Google Ads conversion action tab, and if I copy the conversion ID here again and then paste in the value, this value will now be stored in a variable called conversion ID, and then click save. Now if I go back to my tag, if I go back to the Google Ads form submissions tag that we made, edit this, and if I delete the conversion ID from here, and I click on this Lego block here with the plus icon, I can actually find the conversion ID variable that I just made. And if I click on that, this field will populate with the conversion ID variable that we just pasted in, which is this value here. Now, the conversion ID always remains the same for your Google Ads account. Unless you're using multiple Google Ads accounts, the ID should always be the same. So it makes more sense to create a variable for it if you have multiple conversion tags inside of Google Tag Manager. We don't need to really make a variable for the conversion label because the conversion label is unique to a conversion action. So if I have multiple conversion tags inside of Google Tag Manager for different conversion actions, this ID will always be different. So we don't really need to make a variable for it. So you could if you wanted to. Yeah, but now we've done that, let's click save there. Again, we'll just save tag. Okay, so the next thing we need to do is to create a trigger. Now you can create a trigger by going to the trigger section here, or you can actually go back to the tag we just made and then add a trigger here. But for now, I'll just use the triggers page to make the trigger that I need to. So I'll click on new, and I'll name this trigger to form submissions. Click on edit. And now I need to select a trigger type. So for this trigger type, I will create a form submission trigger. So this trigger type will look for when a form is actually submitted. Now this can be fired in all forms or for some forms. So for this example, I'm going to do some forms, and you want to set this to page path and then contains, and the URL of this page is this here, 𝗪𝗏𝗁𝗁.co.uk/GTM. But since this is page path, it only needs to look for everything after .co.uk, which in this case will be /GTM. So this trigger will look for when a form is submitted and when a page path contains the page path of /GTM, which is where the form is located. I could again have it run on all forms if I wanted to, but since we're only tracking one single form that's on one single page, we'll keep the trigger as this. And again, we'll click save. And now what we need to do is we need to add this trigger to the tag we just made. So we'll go back to the Google Ads form submissions conversion tracking tag. We'll go to the triggering section, click on edit, and then we click on the form submissions trigger that we just made. And as you can see here, the name is here, the type of trigger that it is, and then the filter, which is the one we just made, which is contains page path contains GTM. Click on that, and now we have a Google Ads conversion tag that has a trigger. And now we just need to save this. Okay, so now that our tags are ready to go, the next step is to preview the container to ensure that things are actually working correctly before we push them live through the submit button to the live container. So the next step is to click the preview button, which will open up a new tab. And then we want to paste in the URL of the form of where the form is located, which is 𝗪𝗏𝗁𝗁.co.uk/GTM in this example case, and then you click connect. And as you can see here, it's opened up the landing page with the form on, and we've got a button here called Tag Assistance. And then finally, you'll have another tab with the Tag Assistance live preview mode. So you can see a bunch of information here gets shown when you are in the Google Tag Manager preview mode. So if I click on this GTM-𝗪𝗏𝗁, which is the 𝗪𝗏𝗁 page, or sorry, it's the page where the form is. So 𝗪𝗏𝗁.co.uk/GTM. If you look here, the output section, you can see that one tag has already fired here, which is the conversion link tag that we just created earlier. And as you can see here, the second tag that we created, the Google Ads form submissions tag, has not been fired yet because we haven't actually filled out the form and submitted it yet. So this right now is currently working as intended because the conversion linker should always be firing regardless of what page it is. So let's fill in the form with a test submission and see what happens in the debug tab. So we'll just put this as test, email, test@𝗪𝗏𝗁𝗁.co.uk, and we'll have the message of hello. And then I'll click submit. Your message has been received. Now, if I go back to Tag Assistant, you can see that some additional fields here have been fired. So we've got form start, form submit, form submit. So as you can see here on this form submit, the tag of form submissions, the Google Ads tag, fired because a form was actually submitted. So if I click on this tag here, I can further look into the details. As you can see here, there's a bunch of information about this Google Ads tag. If I click and show more here, you can see the additional information like the conversion ID of this tag and the conversion label. As you can see, these match the strings here that were on the Google Ads UI. So 164 and then form submission, which is the conversion label, is 𝗪𝗵𝘁'. So if I go back here, you can see it matches 164, 𝗪𝗵𝘁'. So this is actually correct. So as you can see, we go to the landing page, we submit a form, and you can see that the Google Ads form submission gets fired once the form submit happens. So if I go back to the overview for this whole landing page, both tags have now fired. And if I go back to this form page, refresh it here, go back to the preview modes, I'll get a second summary page here because it's now loaded another session for this landing page. As you can see here, it's just gone back to one tag firing because the form has reset and no submission has been made. So this is like the second session and this is the first one. So that is all working as intended. Okay, so let's do a second scenario. Let's say instead of tracking a form submission when the submit button is clicked, how do we track a form submission if they then get sent to a thank you page instead? So instead of tracking when they click the submit button here, we track when the thank you page is actually loaded up. So I'll just show you an example of how it works currently. So if I fill this in with some test information, click submit, I get sent to a different page now. So if we go back to Google Tag Manager, we will create a second trigger this time. So go to triggers, go to new, and we'll call this thank you page. Click on trigger configuration. And instead of doing form submission, the form submission trigger type, we will do page view instead. So click on this, and then instead of being on all page views, we only want to do it on some page views. Click on this drop down here, and we will do page path. And again, we'll do the condition as contains, and the URL of the thank you page is 𝗪𝗿𝗁.co.uk/thank you. But again, because it's page path, we only need everything after the .co.uk of the domain. So if we remove this, keep it as /thank_you/ and click save, like so. Go to tags, and we will adjust this Google Ads form submissions tag. So if we click on edit, we will remove this one, which is for the form submission trigger type. Click on edit, and then we will add the thank you page or page view thank you page trigger that we just made. Click save. And again, we will click on preview. Go back to the same landing page. As you can see, Tag Assistant is loaded. Go back to the Tag Assistant page. Only one tag is fired, which is the conversion linker, and we still have the Google Ads form submissions tag unfired. So we'll fill out the form. Click submit. We'll get sent to the thank you page. And if we go back to Tag Assistant, so this has loaded the session of the thank you page here. So we've got the GTM page, which is where the form was loaded. Again, it's just one tag fired here. And now if I go into this summary page here, for the thank you page, you can see that both tags for the conversion linker and the Google Ads form submission tag has fired because this page contains /thank_you in the page path. So again, I can click on the Google Ads form submissions tag, click show more, and you can see the conversion ID is there and the conversion label. The conversion ID is just showing the variable name, but if I click on when the tag was actually fired, so this is for container loaded, click on this and click show more. Yeah, you can see that the conversion ID, the actual value, is actually showed here, which again is working correctly. Okay, so now that we've confirmed that the Google Ads conversion tracking is working for form submissions, whether it's from a form submission button click or whether they get sent to the thank you page, we can now confidently push these changes live to the container. So in its current state, it's only working in the preview mode that we just tested out. So it's not actually working in your live Google Tag Manager container. So that means if you had Google Ads running right now, you had people actively clicking on your ads and going to your landing pages, these conversion tags will not actually work because they aren't officially pushed to the live container. So to push these changes live, all you need to do is click the submit button here. You can give this a version name if you want to, with a description. So we can just call this version 1. Click publish, and then Google Tag Manager will publish these changes to the live container. So as you can see here, we have 2 tags added, 2 triggers, and then 6 variables. One more thing as well to note. So for this Google conversions action that we just made, if I click on done here, since we don't need these tag manager instructions anymore for the conversion ID and form submission, or sorry, conversion label, you'll see that there's a status section here for the conversion action. So when you create a brand new conversion action, the status of it will always be inactive, like this red tag here, which means it's currently not working, or Google can't detect that there is a tag for it, which indicates that it will be working. But as you can see here, because we just did the preview mode in Google Tag Manager and tested that the form submission does actually work, even though it was in a test environment, you can see that its status has changed to no recent conversions. So Google has actually identified that the tag is actually working and data is being sent to Google Ads, again, even though it was in a test environment. But now that we've pushed it live, and assuming we're sending live traffic to the landing page and people are actually filling out the form, this should eventually populate with conversion data. So yeah, that's the end of module 2. Hopefully now you can confidently create Google Ads conversion tags for form submissions inside of Google Tag Manager. And if you are a business running Google Ads and you would like an audit and maybe some feedback on your campaigns and ads that you are running, then please do check out our free marketing plan. You can find more information at 𝗪𝗏𝘁.co.uk, or you can check the links in the description of the video. And yeah, if you stayed around till the end of the video, thank you very much. Please do drop a like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the final module, which is module 3, in the next video. Cheers, bye.